Manas, Jnanendriya, and Karmendriya. From the Taijasa arises Manas. It considers objects, but is unable to be certain of them. From Taijasa also arise the Jnanendriyas. From Vaikari arise the Karmendriyas. Jnanendriyas and their objects. The Jnanendriyas are ear, eye, nose, tongue, and body. Their objects of sensation are respectively sound, form, smell, taste, and touch. Karmendriyas and their actions. The wise declare the Karmendriyas to be mouth, feet, hands, alimentary canal, and organs of generation. Their actions are respectively speech, motion, manipulation, alimentation, and excretion and pleasure. A classification of all the above. The Karmendriya and Jnanendriya form external organs. Manas and other tattvas form the internal organs. Antakarana. Those who inquire further will find the ragam and their tattvas are even internal to these four, and the soul lives controlled by these forces generated by Maya. Bhutati Tanmatras, Puriyashtaka. From Bhutati are generated the 5 Tanmatras, Sabda, Sparsa, Rupa, Rasa, and Gandha. They help the Jnanendriyas to sense. The Tanmatras and Manas, Buddhi, and Ahankara form the Puriyashtaka. The former class of Tanmatras are the objective and the latter subjective, and should not be confounded with each other. It is a distinction of very great psychological importance. The 5 gross elements and their relations to the above. From the 5 Tanmatras arise respectively Akash, air, fire, water, and earth. These have qualities one more than the other. The relation of the Tanmatras to its products is that of the embodied to the body. Bhutati, the product of Ahankara, is the visible element out of which the gross material elements, earth, etc., are finally evolved. This original Bhuta is mental and is subjective. The gross elements are objective, though all these are products of Maya. Akash possesses only one quality, sound, which is its special one. Vayu possesses sound and its own peculiar quality, Sparsa. Agni possesses sound and touch and its peculiar quality, Rupa. Water possesses sound, touch, form, and in addition rasa, or taste. Earth possesses all the above 4 and its own peculiar quality, gandha, or smell. The qualities of the gross elements. Akash is space giving room to all other elements. Air moves everywhere and brings together everything. Fire burns and unites a thing. Water is cool and it softens things. Earth is hard and it bears all things. Their form, color, and symbols. The earth, water, fire, air, and Akash are respectively of the form of a square, crescent, triangle, hexagon, and circle. They are respectively of the colors gold, white, red, black, and blue. Their symbols respectively are Vajram, lotus, Swastika, the 6 points, and Amrita, Vindu. Their deities are Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Maheshvara, and Sadashiva. The deities of the 5 kalas are also the same. The first, fire, named above as Suddhatattvas, and the next mentioned 31 tattvas, make up a total of 36. Of these, the first are classed as Chit. Purusha is Chit Achit, and the remaining 30 are Achit. The commentators add that the first 5 only are called Chit, as they reflect the true Chit, light and truth, perfectly. Atma or Purusha Tattva is called Chitachit because it becomes light in light and dark in darkness. Another classification. The first 5 are called Suddha, the next 7 are called Suddha. The next 24 below Purusha are called as Asuta. They respectively form for the jiva the regions of Priraka, direction, Bhoga, enjoyment, and Bhogya, things enjoyed. All are tattvas. The whole universe constituting all that has form, the formless, and those that have form and no form, is the manifestation of the tattvas. These tattvas manifest themselves each in 3 ways, Sthula, Sukshuma, and Para. The jivas that always stand connected with the tattvas, which are under the impelling influence of the Sadakyas, also bear their names. Thus all things are in fact tattvas only. In the Tamil original it gives us those that have form and no form, para atisukshma. Jivas here stand for the three kinds of jivas, Vijnana Kalar, Pralaya Kalar, and Shakalar. Involution and evolution of the tattvas. The 24 tattvas complete their involution in Srikanta Rudra, and the next 6 tattvas in Anantadeva, and the 3 Sudavidya upwards in Laya Shiva. These 3 are eternal, say they. The other 2, Vindu and Nada, involute in Sudashiva. The evolution of the tattvas also takes place in the same way. Shiva is eternal, the other 3 tattvas are so only in name. As the tattvas involute in and evolve from Sudashiva, it follows that he is the cause of the involution and evolution. Place of religions in order of tattvas. All false creeds take their stand severally in the tattvas from Bhuta's elements to Mohini, Asudamaya. The 6 true creeds beginning from Shaiva have their respective places in the tattvas from Vidya upwards. Our Lord is beyond the tattvas. False creeds are 18 in number, of which 6 are external, 6 external internal, and the remaining 6 are externo internal. The names of these creeds and their explanation can be gleaned from commentaries. Creeds here stand for the deities worshipped by the people who profess them. The tattvas, which form the seats of the deities, also form the Muktisthana of the creeds. Our Lord Sudashiva is the deity of the Siddhanta Shaiva religion. Navabheda and the Lord. The one Lord alone acts, pervading through the 9 Vargas, Shiva, Shakti, Nada, and Bindu, the formless 4, Sadashiva, of form and without form, Maheshvara, Rudra, Vishnu, and Brahma, the 4 of form, who appear one from the other and performs their several functions. Shakti and Vindu are included as they are in the line of evolution in spite of their female character, because unlike Manonmani and other Shaktis, they partake of the characteristics of both male and the female energies in causing the manifestations. Shakti Beda. The Shakti kinds appertaining to the manifestations of Shiva are 7 in number: Shakti, Vindu Shakti, Manonmani, Mahesha, Uma, Lakshmi, and Sarasvati. Yet they are all one, Parashakti. Whatever aspect her Lord manifests himself in that she manifests herself also. The manifestations of Shiva reckoned here are only 7, for Shakti and Vindu have been left out as they stand midway between the male and the female energies. It is Shakti who manifests herself as Nada and the 6 following Vargas. It is Shiva who forms all Vargas from Shakti upwards. Whatever of shape there is that proceeds from Shakti is Shakti and Shiva combined. The Shakti who manifests herself in whatever forms the Shakta wills is his matchless consort. Shiva begets Shakti, and Shakti begets Sadashiva. Both in their happy union produce the worlds and the jivas. Still Bhava, Shiva, is changeless, and the sweet-speeched Shakti is free from likes and dislikes. Sages only comprehend this secret. The bondage and release of the soul, the tattvas manifesting themselves as the body senses, worlds and enjoyments, coming from Ashuddhamaya and forming bandha, and those coming from Shuddhamaya leading to freedom, affect the jivas. He who thus understands the nature of the tattvas and eliminates them one by one through nivriti and other kalas, realizes the supreme beyond. Such is the true sage just described. The use of the tattvas. Why do all these tattvas together affect the jivas? It is for reaping the fruits of past karma completely, for rooting out the very seed of karma so that it may not arise again, and getting rid of the evil anavamala. Since it is jivas, not Shiva, that get rid of mala and karma by means of the tattvas, it follows that the tattvas do not affect Shiva. Nature of anavamala. Anavamala, with its many Shaktis, is one, pervading through the numberless jivas as the dirt in copper, and having no beginning hides their jnana and kriya. It also affords them the capacity for experience, and is ever the source of ignorance. The dirt that is inherent in copper can be removed once and for all by alchemical processes, and when it is so removed, the copper remains no longer copper, but is transformed into resplendent gold. In like manner, the jiva that is affected by mala can be freed from it only when Sivagnana is attained, and the jiva that is so freed from mala remains no longer a jiva, but attains patitva, merging into Shiva. The illustration of dirt and copper is favorite with the Siddhanta, and should therefore be carefully noted. Anava and Maya differentiated. Do you say there is no other entity as Mala, Anava? It is only the effect of Maya. Understand well that Maya causes Ichcha, Jnana, and Kriya to arise in the Jivas, but Anava causes the same to disappear. That Anava is inherent in the Jivas, but Maya is separate from them, and besides manifesting itself as the universe, forms the body, senses, worlds, and enjoyments. This forms an answer to the false creeds that identify Maya with Anavamala. Purvapakavada. As a black cloud hides from view the brilliant sun, so Maya veils Jnana and Kriya of the Jivas. The sun begins to shine in his full glory when the cloud vanishes, so Jnana and Kriya begin to shine in the Jivas with the dissolution of the body. This is called the Avarana Shakti of Maya. Its power to enlighten the soul is called Vikshepa Shakti. Purvapaka Vada continued, and Siddhanta. As the expansive light disappears when the cloud veils the sun, so Jnana and Kriya disappear when the body screens the Jivas. Siddhanta, Ichcha, Jnana, and Kriya are manifest in the Jivas when they are embodied. When they are not, nothing but darkness prevails. Embodied includes both the gross and subtle bodies. What veils Jnana and Kriya of the Jivas is the Anava, whose existence you ignored. Since it is inseparably associated with the Jivas, it may even be regarded as one of their qualities. Maya graciously provides the Jivas with the tattvas from Kala downwards, so that they may shake off the shackles of ignorance. These two, therefore, are as opposed to each other as darkness and lamplight. By commingled it is to be understood that Mala is separable from the Jivas, and by one of the qualities that it is so very intimately connected with them. The word also indicates that Anava is not a quality of the Jivas. Vide following stanza. Jiva and Mala differentiated. Do you mean that ignorance, avidya, is a quality of Purusha, Jiva? Then Purusha should be matter. Would you say that the defect in the eye of a blind man is a quality of the eye itself? Possessing ignorance as its attribute, Mala always remains matter, but Jiva is spirit, Chit, which has Jnana for its quality. It is clearly shown by the illustration that Mala is a defect, not a quality of the Jivas. The commentators point out that the nature of this anava or ajnana is neither the opposite of jnana, jnana virodhi, nor jnana abhava in its divisions of pragabhava, adyantabhava, nor anyata jnana, and that it is jnana tirabhava, i.e. concealing or veiling of jnana. They also point out that this is neither agantuka, a connection established at a particular time, or svabhavika, an inherent connection in which the ajnana can never disappear. These distinctions are of the highest importance and should be carefully noted as they affect one's view of nature and of man very materially. The products of anava are stated to be moham, madam, ragam, vishadam, tapam, sosham, and vichitriyam. How the three malas act. The three malas, Anava, Maya, and Karma, delusive in their character, veil the true nature of the jivas, and produce in them illusory enjoyments, bondage, and capacity for experience as the sprout, bran, and chaff in paddy. There are also two other malas which we will point out presently. Anava mala, in conjunction with the efficient cause, provides the jiva with the capacity for experience, as the chaff is the efficient cause of sprouting. Maya, being the instrumental cause, makes with its effects bodies and senses. The bondage of the jivas, as the bran favoring the growth, coexists with the other ingredients. Karma, being the material cause, affords enjoyments to the jivas as the sprout becomes manifest by a power latent in it. This follows Sivagnana Yogi's explanation. Other commentators differ as to which is which. Shivagra Yogi identifies Bran with Anava and Maya with husk, and with this we are disposed to agree. Though both are coverings of the soul, the connection of Anava is much more immediate, and the husk, Maya, is useful in removing the bran, Anava, in pounding. See verse 84 above. All the three malas cause bandha and cover the soul like the sprout, bran, and husk. Karma is the material cause, mutalkaranam, causing immediately pleasures and pains, and called therefore the cause of bhoga. Maya is called cause of bandha, and as instrumental cause, tunai, causes body, senses, etc., making the soul enjoy pleasures and pains. Anava is called cause of bhoktritva, and is the efficient cause, nimitta, includes all these for its own removal finally. Maya, otherwise called also as Mahamaya, is the combination of all the products of Ashuddhamaya from Kala, etc., which becomes attached to each individual soul. It is these mala as attached to each man that causes his individuality, and which is born again and again, till they are utterly annihilated in nirvana. The two other malas, one is Maya, which is the effect of Asuddha Maya, and the other is Trodaya, a Shakti of the pure that commands the three malas to perform their respective functions. So the learned say. These five malas stand adhering to the jivas. Tiradana or Tirabhava literally means concealment, and is accordingly translated in Tamil. This is considered as a Shakti of the Supreme God in effecting one of the Panchakrityas, Tirabhavam, as the Panchakrityas are ascribed to the five Murtis from Brahma, Vishnu, etc. The Lord of Tirabhava becomes Maheshvara. It has its place in the Panchakshara and its symbol Na, Vide Unma Vilakam, 5:41 and 42 studies. The rules for the contemplation of the five letters are given in verses 74 and 79, Shiva Prakasham. In the verse before us and in verse 20, Shiva Prakasham, this Tirabhava Shakti, which is really of the soul, is considered as a mala or pasha, and the reason is given in verse 8, Shiva Prakasham. It brings about malaparipakam, and hence it is called a mala. The same Shakti will act as the grace, which will make the soul reach the feet of the Lord, whose braids are adorned with the serpent and Ganga and moon. In verse 20, Saint Umapati Shivacharya speaks of this as inducing Malaparipakam. This he describes more fully in his Pariparodai. The Ancient of Ancients, with no one before him, thus makes the soul eat the fruits of both kinds of karma, and on performing good karma he makes them enter the punya lokas in succession, without entering the hells, and when he thus nears the good path, he makes them both enjoy the company of true bhaktas, and just as a flower becomes a full-blown flower from a small bud in good births, and when their karma is balanced, he makes them enjoy the company of true bhaktas, just as the flower becomes a full-blown flower from a half-bud in good births, and when their karma is balanced. He watches the proper time and gives his grace to them. Praise be to him. In Tirukalirupadiyar, verse 4, it is said, the dancer in the Ambalam, the Nishkala, became imminent in the world as Sakala, O my disciple, as he ever became one with me, to rid me of my Anavamala. In Tiramantra, this very same aspect is brought out under the healing of Tirabhava. Him who dwells in souls, the light that is within us, the one who is not separated even 1 foot from our heart, him who dwells together with the souls, him the souls did not understand. The Lord who is born as bliss entered the sorrows of the evil Pasha. Hence also he is called the darkness in darkness. The verse before this Shakti is said to order the activities of other malas. From these we gather that the Lord's power has come into play in nature and in man, and his sheaths of pasha, and while in such close union he conceals himself from the souls, and the souls from himself, and conceals their intelligence, besides, till they have eaten the fruits of karma and attained to Malaparipakam and Iruvinayopu, and thus becomes the saving grace which finally unites the soul to his feet. Reincarnation of the jivas. The soul, affected by the five malas, anava, maya, karma, mayaya, and trodeyi, passes in a moment at the good Lord's behest through birth and death, the higher and the lower worlds, like the whirling firebrand and the whirlwind which cease not in their motion. At the good Lord's behest shows the agent with whose grace the escape from the wheel of birth and death can be effected. Rareness of the human birth. When we consider the case of a jiva which, after passing through the 8,400,000 kinds of yonis embryo of fourfold nature as Andaja, Svetaja, Utbija, and Sarayuja, becomes human born, we can but compare it with an individual who has with his own hands swum the white ocean. Rareness of a high-class human birth. It is a great blessing to be born in a land where savages do not inhabit, but there is the study of the four Vedas supreme, escaping birth among the lower classes of the human race. Rare is it that one should be fortunate to be born among the people privileged to perform religious austerities and to profess the Shaiva Siddhanta religion without falling into the ways of other creeds. Rareness of becoming a Shaiva. Very rare is it that one should be so fortunate as to enter with meekness the Shaiva creed, unaffected by the pride of riches on the one side and escaping the littleness of poverty on the other. Those who can worship the crescent-crested being with the high Sivagnana will attain his grace. Riches are of various kinds as rank, youth, learning, wealth, and power. To be born poor is indeed miserable. It is desirable, therefore, that one should be rich in a moderate degree, so that he may not go a-begging. But he must not, however, be proud of it. Such meekness cannot be obtained but by devotion to the Lord. Thus meekness and devotion are almost synonymous. The use of human birth. Was it not the purpose when the souls were endowed with human birth that they should with their mind, speech, and body serve Hara, who is anointed with the fivefold products of the cow? The celestials themselves descend on the earth and worship Hara. Dumb men, alas, who roam hither and thither in the fleshy frame, understand not anything of this higher life. By dumb men are meant the beast-like men whose aspirations go no farther than the satisfaction of the physical cravings. Transitoriness of the human body. Perishable in the womb, perishable as soon as it is born, perishable after a little growth, perishable as an infant, perishable as a youth, perishable as a gray-haired old man. Any wise death dogs the footsteps of the flesh. Therefore look to your freedom from bondage while yet you are strong. Body in all its aspects is evanescent as mist in the air. Where is room, then, for a man's being proud of his strength or youth, power or beauty? Transitoriness of worldly experience. When one sense experiences, other senses are away. The experiences of a single sense are not exhausted at once. In a certain state all experiences vanish. The annoying life experiences are vanishing instantly, or sometime after as dreams. If this truth is understood, freedom is attained. Sense experience signifies experience induced by external objects. As the experiences are so multifarious and varying, they cannot be all grasped at once by the intellect that resides in the body. The peculiar state referred to is sleep or swoon. Life experiences also include the objects that form the stage of experience. Men of prosperity with pride are corpses, with spices smeared and with garlands adorned, wearing clothes of gold and followed by attendants. Men of prosperity, speechless and devoid of understanding, lounging proudly in the palanquin borne by carriers, on either side fans swinging. Amidst the harmonious music of the instruments and the wild sound of the clarion are but corpses. With all the embellishments that riches can afford, what better profit can men derive than corpses, if they do not open their eye of understanding? Worldly poverty versus divine riches. Behind men who lead the life of a corpse, you move about like walking corpses, straining your body, soul, and understanding together for nourishing your body, which appears and vanishes in a moment. Knowing thus, you do not even once worship Hara. If you do so, he will see that beings higher than you fall prostrate at your feet. To support this body is not a great thing. For the matter of that, the Creator himself will take care of your body if you fail to feed it. Therefore worship him always, aiming at liberation from ignorance and bondage. When higher beings themselves tender their homage to you, no mention need be made of beings of your kind. Suttaram 3. Pashu Lakshanam. There is a soul, its nature. There is a soul separate from the body. It is existent. It is united to a body and possessed of faults, the feeling of I and mine. It wills, thinks, and acts. Ichcha, jnana, and kriya. It becomes conscious after dream. It experiences pleasures and pains, the fruits of karma. It undergoes the 5 avashtas, and it exists even in Turyatita. Each one of these statements is made in answer to a different theory as regards the soul. It is said to be existent in answer to those who deny the reality of a soul substance, as such a thing is implied in the very act of denial. The next statement is made in answer to those who would assert that the body itself is the soul, and that there is no soul other than the body. The fact is, though the soul may be in conjunction and correlation with the body, yet it asserts its own independence when it calls my body, my I, etc. Another asserts that the 5 senses form the soul. To him the answer is made that the soul is possessed of more powers than those exercised by the Jnanendriyas. Another states that the Shukshma Sarira forms the soul. The answer is that after awaking, one becoming conscious must be different from the dream body. Prana is shown not to be the soul, as there is no consciousness in deep sleep, though prana may be present. It is different again from God, as instead of its intelligence being self-luminous, it understands only in conjunction with the different states of the body. The combination of the above powers of the body is shown not to be soul, inasmuch as it subsists even in the Turyatita condition when all the bodily functions cease. This stanza is further important as it gives a clear and concise definition of the soul, or Jivatma, a definition which we fail to get in any other system. It is shown to be different from the body composed of Maya and its products, buddhi, senses, etc., and also different from God. It is not to be identified with any one or with all or any combination and permutation of the bodily functions, nor is it a combination of the body, Maya, and Antakaranas, and God, nor any obhasha of these. But how is it found? It is always found in union with a body, gross or subtle, and the mystery of this union is of more serious import than most other problems. It is possessed of certain powers, will, intellection, and powers, but distinguished from the supreme will and power. Inasmuch as this is faulty or imperfect and dependent, it is possessed of feeling and emotion, and suffers pain and pleasure as a result of its ignorance and union with the body. And this suffering is not illusory, which must distinguish it again from God, who is not tainted by any, and who has neither likes nor dislikes, etc. The soul is also limited by its coats, and this limitation is not illusory either. Even after saying all this, there is one characteristic definition of the soul, which is alone brought out in the Siddhanta and in no other school, and which serves to clear the whole path of psychology and metaphysics of its greatest stumbling blocks. We mean its power to become identical with the one it is attached to, and erasing thereby its own existence and individuality the moment after its union with this other, and its defect or inability to exist independent of either the body or God as a foothold or rest, so that the closest physiological and biological experiment and analysis cannot discover the soul's existence in the body, landing as such a Buddha and a Schopenhauer and a Tyndall in the direst despair and pessimism, and it is this same peculiarity which has foiled such an astute thinker as Shankara in his search for a soul when in union with God. The materialist and idealist work from opposite extremes, but they meet with the same difficulty, the difficulty of discovering a soul other than matter or God. Hence it is that Buddha and his modern-day representatives, the agnostics, it is remarkable how powerfully Buddha appeals today and is popular with these soulless and godless sects, declare the search for a psyche soul to be vain, for there is no psyche, in fact, and the absurdities and contradiction of the Indian idealistic school flows freely from this one defect of not clearly differentiating between God and soul. This power or characteristic of the soul is brought out in the analogy of crystal or mirror. See last note in my edition of Light of Grace or Tiruvarutpayan, and the defect of the soul is brought out by comparing it to the Agni or fire, which cannot become manifest except when it is attached to a piece of firewood or wick. When once we understand this particular nature of the soul, how easy it is for one to explain and illustrate the Tattvamasi and other mantras which are to be taught to the disciple for practicing soul elevation. And in my reading, I never came upon a more remarkable book than a small pamphlet of Professor Henry Drummond called The Changed Life, in which the analogy of the mirror is fully brought out, together with a full explanation of the process by which the soul elevation is effected. But how is the poor character to be made better and better, or the reflecting image clearer and clearer? It is by cleansing the mirror soul freer and freer from dirt, and bringing it more and more in line with the effulgent light, that this can be effected. And when the mirror is absolutely perfect and nearest, the light shines brightest, and so overpowers the mirror, and the mirror is lost to view, and the glory and light of the Lord is felt. For, observes the learned professor truly, what you are conscious of is the glory of the Lord, and what the world is conscious of, if the result be a true one, is also the glory of the Lord. In looking at a mirror, one does not see the mirror or think of it, but only of what it reflects. For a mirror never calls attention to itself, except when there are flaws in it. These flaws are the colors of the Siddhanti, who compares them to the Maya or body. The union with the body, it is the body alone that is cognized, and not the mirror-like soul. In union with God, the glory and light alone is perceived, and not the mirror-like soul either. And the professor declares all men are mirrors. That is the first law on which this formula of satisfaction or corruption is based. One of the aptest descriptions of a human being is that he is a mirror, and we must beg our readers to go through the whole pamphlet to note how beautifully he draws out his parallel. He notes the second principle which governs this process, namely the law of assimilation or identification. This law of assimilation is the second and by far the most impressive truth which underlies the formula of sanctification, the truth that men are not only mirrors, so far from being mere reflectors of the fleeting things they see, transfer into their own inmost substance and hold in permanent preservation the things that they reflect. No one can know how the soul can hold these things. No one knows how the miracle is done. No phenomenon in nature, no process in chemistry, no chapter in necromancy can even help us to begin to understand the amazing operation. For think of it, the past is not only focused, there is a man's soul, it is there. How could it be reflected from there if it were not there? All things he has ever seen, known, felt, believed of the surrounding world are now within him, have become a part of him. In part are him, he has been changed into their image. These two principles, the law of reflection and the law of assimilation, in fact underlie our mantra and tantra, our upasana and sadhana, bhavana and yoga, and our books instance the case of the snake charmer chanting. The Garuda mantra, an illustration of this second principle of assimilation or identification. The doctrine of regarding God as other than the soul requires very elaborate treatment, and we hope to deal with it separately. It is the one point which distinguishes the true Vedanta as borne out by the text of the Vedanta Sutras themselves, and which is accepted by all the Tamil philosophers like Tirumallar and Tayumanavar and others, and the Vedanta so-called as interpreted and expounded by Shankara. Soul is other than body and prana. Why should you require a soul other than the body? Does not the body itself feel and know? Then if so, why does not the body feel when it becomes a corpse? If it be replied that feeling is absent as prana is absent, then there is no feeling either in sleep, though prana is present in the body. The five senses do not constitute the soul. If the sense constitute the real soul, then why don't they perceive in sleep? Then the senses perceive one after another, and each one a different sensation. You say this is their nature, but it is a defect that one sense does not perceive another sensation. What cognizes each sense and sensation, and altogether must be different from all these, and it is the soul. The five senses have no such cognition. Prana is not the soul. Prana is the conscious being, as there is no consciousness when the breath is stopped, temporarily or permanently, but it is not conscious in deep sleep. You say this is so, as it is not in conjunction with the senses. But if the prana is the soul, the senses cannot drop when prana is conscious. The soul really cognizes everything by controlling the prana. Lakshanavyal, Sutaram 4, Adhikaranam 1, soul is not the Antakarana. You say the conscious being is the antakarana, but none of these cognize each other's operation. Each, in fact, performs a different function. The soul understands all, controls all, is in union with them, bringing them into manifestation or not, in the various avasthas, and stands apart with the consciousness of I and mine. The three kinds of jnana, pasha, pashu, and patijnana. Manas, buddhi, chitam, and ahankara are the instruments of the soul. Their union with the soul is such that the antakaranas look as though they were the real soul. Regarding these merely as a light which aids the eye in darkness, and clearly distinguishing them as such from the soul, he understands his real self. Such knowledge is pashujnana. Then will be induced the higher knowledge, patijnana or shivajnana, the identifying of soul with the products of Maya as pashajnana, that the knowledge of one's own nature is distinct from matter and from God is pashujnana or atmajnana, where even this consciousness is merged and lost in contemplation and enjoyment of the highest bliss, he attains to patijnana. The expression is very often misunderstood and misinterpreted. It simply means understanding oneself, understanding his real nature, and does not mean understanding oneself as God or as anything else. After attaining this self-knowledge, the Vedas postulate distinctly a higher knowledge, the knowledge of God, and such passages are again misinterpreted to mean that the soul sees God as himself, when in fact the last two words as himself is nowhere found in the text. Their akshara, ahankara, buddhi, manas, chitam, and purusha are able to function only the help to the akshara, a, u, m, vindu, and nada respectively. All these together form the pranava shukshuma. The way the consciousness rises and falls is as the rise and fall of the waves in the sea. When considered deeply, the nature of their action will be manifest. Their devatas, Brahma, Vishnu, Rudra, Maheshvara, and Sadashiva respectively, guide the letters A, U, M, Vindu, and Nada. It is in this fivefold union the soul cognizes, and in their absence it is more like asat. If one controls in yoga his two breaths and examines them, their nature can be plainly seen. The combination of all the foregoing is not the soul. If the Atma is held to be the combination of all the above, then there will be only these different things, but no Atma. If you say these separate things themselves in fact constitute the soul, then the soul who recognizes them is different, as the object perceived is quite distinct from the perceiving object. The view of the soul, Jivatma, refuted here is credited to the Sautrantika Buddhists by some commentators and to Mayavadis by others. We have not been able to get from the followers of the latter school a proper definition of the Jivatma, nor a uniform one, and one Swami or Chidambaram, when we pressed him for a definition, stated that it was an Olafudrida of the Abhasa or Brahman, and Antakarana and other lower products of Maya. Our reply to him was, which of these was in bandham, bondage, and which of these was to reach mukti, freedom? The abhasa of Brahman is either Brahman or it is not. If it is Brahman, it can suffer no bondage, nor does it require to be freed. If it is not, then we reck not if it is in bondage or not. It cannot matter to us either whether the Antakarana and lower senses do or do not suffer, and it is here stated once that our distinct position is that the Jivatma we postulate is one above the Antakaranas, and is in no sense an Olafadrida of any number of things. He it is that is constrained and dragged by sin and desire and suffers pain. The following passages from the Upanishads clearly bring out the distinction. Isa supports all this together, the perishable and the unperishable, the developed and the undeveloped. The Amsa, Atma, is bound because he has to enjoy the fruits of karma, but when he has known God, Deva, he is freed from all fetters. There are two, one following Ishvara, the other not knowing Jiva, both unborn, Aja, one strong, the other weak. There is she, the unborn, through whom each man receives the recompense of the works, and there is the infinite Atma, appearing under all forms, but himself inactive. Then a man finds out these three, that is, Brahma. That which is perishable is the Pradhana, and the immortal and imperishable is Hara. The one God, Ekodeva, rules the perishable Pradhana and the Atma. From meditating on him, from joining him, from becoming one with him, there is further cessation of all illusion in the end. Svetashvatara Upanishad 1:8-10. Anisa and Isha, Atma and Paratma, Purusha and Parampurusha, Jiva and Param or Brahman, Pashu and Pati, and Agna and Jna are parallel sets of terms meaning soul and God. Isa in these passages does not mean a personal God but the highest Brahman. She is Padana or Prakriti and not Devatma Shakti. Adhikaranam 2. In this Adhikarana are reviewed the various theories which has been propounded in regard to the nature of the soul, and they require very close attention. Soul is derived from God by parinama? No. You state that the soul possessing the qualities of intelligence, will, and power of the Supreme stands to the Supreme as heat to fire, as guna to guni, in beta-beta relation, and appears variously. If so, then the jiva need not be possessed of senses and organs to become intelligent. God is self-luminous, and if soul is also God, it must be self-luminous also. But the soul in union with the body shines with the light of the body itself, as it will do so with the light of the Lord when in union with the Lord. The Sankhyan doctrine refuted. If it is stated that the Atma is pure intelligence and not possessed of gunas, then it cannot develop will and power. If it is replied that these appear in the body in the presence of the Atma, then these powers must be found also when the body is dead or dead asleep, but they are not found. Therefore, the statement that these are brought into activity by the presence of the Atma stands contradicted. It is again said that the guna is induced by the presence of the Atma just as the magnet attracts iron. If so, it can only induce its own power of attracting objects and not that of repelling objects. On the other hand, the Atma induces such varying actions as thinking and forgetting, running, sitting, reclining, standing, etc. The Paranika's doctrine, the soul has form? No. If the soul is said to possess a form, then this form must be seen in the body. Then also it will become indistinguishable from matter which undergoes transformation and destruction. Again, it must be perceived when it enters the womb. You reply that it is sukshuma and imperceptible to the eye. Just so, your own works belie your theory that it has a form, perceptible. The soul has neither shukshma form. If you say it has shukshma subtle form, then you are evidently mistaking the Atma for the subtle cause of the gross body, namely manas, buddhi, ahankara, and the 5 tanmatras, the Puri Ashtaka. If you say no, and would make it even more subtle than the Puri Ashtaka, then according to us there are even tattvas higher than Puri Ashtaka, the Kala, Raga, Vidya, etc., and all these are material and achit and perishable. The soul is rupa-rupa? No. If the soul is said to be rupa-rupa, then know that the rupa cannot become arupa, and arupa cannot become rupa. One thing cannot have two contradictory natures. If you say it is like the fire latent in the wood, then as the fire shows out in visible form when it burns, the soul must become visible. If it does, it will cease to be sat. The commentators ascribe this doctrine to Kala, and we are not able to identify who these schoolmen are. Perhaps they are Shaktas. If you say again that the Atma is Rupa Rupa, form and formless like the moon, then it must become visible to our eye at some moment. If you reply that this visible body itself is the product and manifestation of Atma, then the Atma becomes Bandha Achit and material. One commentator ascribes the Puravapaksha views stated in the last four stanzas to a section of the Pancharatris. The moon has no form on Amavasya. Patanjali's doctrine, soul is arupi and inactive. If you state the soul is arupi, formless and inactive, or unchangeable, like Agas, then explain why does the soul, becoming bound in bodies, make it undergo all sorts of motions, such as walking, etc. The views of Vaisheshika, the Purvamimamsaka, and others, is soul achit or cheat? The soul is achit, non-intelligent. If soul is achit, non-intelligent, then it can have no cognition at all. If it is chidachit, then also what is chit cannot become achit, and vice versa. It cannot be achit in one part and chit in another part. If again another asserts that it is not achit but chit, then why is it that it has no cognition except in union with the body? Matter is intelligent, soul is intelligent, God is intelligent, but all these are of different planes, and the lower one pales and is considered non-intelligence in the presence of the superior one, and the soul in particular receives light from both sides, from matter and from God. Soul is luminous, but not self-luminous. It cannot illuminate, but can be illuminated. Pancharatri's doctrine: the soul is anu, or atomic. If the soul is said to be anu, or atomic, then it can pass away easily from the body by and of its outer passages. It cannot be kept up in the body. It cannot bear burdens and sufferings. It will be reducing it to the level of material atoms, which are achit. Even as an atom, it will have parts, and accordingly it will be perishable. The soul occupies place in the body. If you say that the soul is located in some portion of the body, then it becomes limited like a form, and hence becomes perishable, and its intelligence cannot be felt all over the body. If you instance lamp and its spreading light, even then the soul will only cognize the things nearest it, as the lamp heats only things near it, else as light its intelligence must be felt through every sense at the same time. Sivagnana Yogi also points out that the analogy is wrong, inasmuch the soul and its intelligence are related as guni and guna, whereas there is no such relation between the flame and its light. He points out that light is but particles of the flame, and it is one with it, and the flame as such can be dissipated. Of course, it is an old and well-rooted fallacy that mind can fill matter or space. The two are utterly contrasted. Mind is the unextended, and matter the extended. How can the unextended fill the extended? It can only do so if it was the extended, i.e. matter, but mind is present in all and every part of the body, and the nature of this connection is what is really mysterious. The analogy of vowel and consonant is what gives us the nature of this connection. The Jaina's doctrine: the soul is all over the body. If you state that the soul is spread over the whole body and thus cognizes, then it must not undergo sleep and other avashtas. Besides, it must understand through all the senses all at once. Then the intelligence must be more or less in proportion to the largeness or smallness of the body. Then again it must decrease as some one or other organ is cut off, and it must vanish when the whole body vanishes also. The Purvamimamsaka's doctrine: the soul is vibhu. If you say the soul is all-pervading, then you must explain how it is that the soul undergoes the 5 avasthas and enters hell and heaven, and how it cannot perceive all things all at once, and how it can know other things when it knows only through some one sense or other. The same Maya conceals the soul. If you say the soul's intelligence is covered by the dirt of Maya, then it must derive no knowledge through the senses and antakarana. Then even when the soul is freed from it, it will again cover it so, will never make mukti. If Maya will not cover the soul after mukti, then it would not have covered it before, and the soul must always be free. If the ever free entered into bondage, the same causes will operate to bring it into bondage even after it attained to moksha once. If it was all pervasive, it cannot get limited. If it did this of its own sweet will and pleasure, then the bondage and limitation is only a name and not a reality, and it can restore itself to its pristine purity at any moment. Then again, the distinctions between purity and impurity, right and wrong, sin and virtue, good and evil, truth and falsehood, must also be nominal. No one need be advised to follow the true and avoid evil. No one need be advised to practice self-abnegation and sadhana chatushtayam, follow a guru, and perform tapas and worship God. The monstrous results of this doctrine will be patent to everybody except to those whose vision is completely obscured by blind prejudice. The schools reviewed above postulate soul and maya or prakriti merely, and they omit all consideration of another factor, namely anava or avidya, which covers and limits the soul. Hence the defect is in their doctrines. It is this anava which limits or covers, and the maya it is that tries to lift the veil little by little as the lamp lights us in darkness, but is of no use in the broad day. Having stated and met the theories of other schools, the author now proceeds to state his own position. Soul's real nature, it is arupi, vyapi, and pashu. It is formless, arupa, and all-pervasive, vibhu, but unlike that of achit or matter, its vyapaka consists in becoming one with the thing it dwells in, for the time being, body or God. Its eternal intelligence and power is eternally concealed by the pasha, bondage, anavamala, and hence called pashu. In this verse is brought out the real definition of the soul or jiva, and which is discussed in our notes in the beginning of the sutra. It meets all the conflicting views held by the different schools as regards the nature of the jiva, and shows also how these different views rose also. It is because of this particular nature of becoming one with whatever it is united to, that people have been led to deny its existence, or to identify it with various organs and senses and God. When the true nature of the soul is perceived, all our difficulties vanish, and we reach the true road which will lead us on to the goal of life. Its different Maya coats and their effect. Entering the womb of Maya, Ashuddha, it regains in a general form its intelligence, will, and power. When it puts on the further coats of Kala, Raga, and Vidya, they become specific, further donning the cloak of the three gunas and their products, such as Antakarana, etc., it perceives in Advaita union with the same. These constitute its guna sarira, kanchuka sarira, and karana sarira according to one classification. Its pilgrimage. The soul lives in a sukshuma sarira and in a stula body in subject to the five avasthas, and becomes born and born again, and performing good and bad works, it enjoys the fruits thereof. The five kosas. The five kosas are Anandamaya, Vijnanamaya, Manomaya, Pranamaya, and Anamaya. Of these, one is more subtle, Shukshuma, than the one that follows it, and these are all evolved from their first cause, Maya. The formless Atma bound in these five kosas lives in and out of it. Each of these kosas is mistaken for the Atma. The materialist mistakes the Anandmaya kosa for the soul. The Ahankaravadi mistakes the Manomaya as the soul. The Buddha mistakes the Vijnanamaya as the soul, and the Vedanti idealist mistakes the Anandamaya as the soul. Commentators identify the Ana and Pranamaya kosas with the Sthula Sarira, Manomaya kosa with the Sukshma body, and Vijnana and Anandamaya kosas with the Karana Sarira. Sivajnana Yogi identifies these five kosas respectively with the Sthula, Sukshma, Guna, Kanchuka, and Karuna Sarira, as defined in stanzas 21 and 22. When the soul identifies itself with Anandmaya kosa, it is within it. When it ascends to the pranamaya kosa and cognizes the anamaya as different from itself, it gets out of it, and so on. But it is to be noted particularly here that the highest condition postulated by the Vedantis as anandamaya, where the atma is in its own place, is but an experience derived by the soul at its first contact and coordinate evolution with matter or maya. What rises even above this is the Siddhanti's soul, or jiva, or pashu, or atma, and above this, and on a higher plane, dwells the supreme Brahman, Shiva. How these kosas are moved. The soul wields the respective kosas as the charioteer his car, as the showman the wooden dolls, as the masked man, as the yogi in another body, as the actor in his different parts. It will be seen that the identification and subjection of the man to his part is less and less as he ascends up, and in the charioteer he has full control over the car he guides and for his own benefit. The Atma of soul is different from the body. Your body is different from yourself as you say, my body, my senses, my karana, my buddhi, etc., inasmuch as you also say my house, my cattle, etc. If you say that house and cattle are separable, but not this body, you find your hairs and nails in the body leaving you, so the whole body can leave you. A further argument. When you clothe yourself in silks and adorn yourself with jewels and flowers, you are not conscious that these are different from you. But when they are removed from you, you become conscious of the difference. Just so, know thyself to be different from your body. Soul is different from Vijnana and Anandamaya kosas. I understand that the body, first three kosas, is not myself, but how can you say that my understanding, Vijnana consciousness, is different from myself, inasmuch as you say my understanding, but we say also my soul? He who has really perceived the soul will not say my soul, it is the ignorant who says no. The meaning of my soul. By Lakshana also we speak of the Buddhi as Manas and Manas as Buddhi. We speak of Chitta as Jiva and Jiva as Chitta. We speak of Atma as God and God as Atma, soul. So also the phrase of my soul denotes another, namely the Supreme Soul, dwelling in your soul. Some language fallacies in common usage. The understanding, body, chittam, etc., are one and all called Atma in the Upanishads, as we speak of the burner as the light itself. All these senses, etc., are different in their action, and inseparably united to them, the soul cognizes them as object. The object is separate from the subject. The five avasthas. The soul who cognizes through the eternal senses dreams in sleep, and sleeps soundly with but bare breath and without action or enjoyment, and waking again recalls its dreams and feels its sound sleep, and then enters into eating and exercises. This is the way the soul cognizes through the five avasthas, with the aid of the physical vestures. Soul is not self-luminous. If the soul were self-luminous, then why does it require the aid of senses and organs? Its relation to its senses and organs is like that of the king to his ministers. As the soul is concealed eternally by a nava, its intelligence is restored by the physical senses, etc. Adhikaranam 3. Relation of soul to the lower organs and its conditions in the various avasthas. Soul is the king. Just as the king on his return from a procession with his troops re-enters his palace, leaving guards at the gates of the different courts he passes through, and finally enters alone the innermost harem, so also the soul passes through the five avasthas in the body, leaving prana as the guard of the innermost portals. This is an old Sankhyan analogy, vide Sankhya Sutras, verses 115, and this has found its way through the ancient Greeks into the thought of Europe, and Leighton also uses the simile of the king and his ministers in one of his novels. Sivagnana Yogi thus expands the simile: soul is king, manas is chariot, prana and other vayus the horses, buddhi is the chief minister, ahankara is the driver, and Jnanadriyas and Karmendriyas are the footmen. The midbrows, throat, heart, belly, and anus are the different courts of the palace. The nature of this passage of the soul from one condition to another has to be clearly noted and realized, otherwise there will be endless confusion. Vide pages 51 to 53, Shivajnana Bodham, for fuller exposition. The names of the five avasthas, etc. When the soul is in Jagravastha, it and its organs number 35, and the place is mid-brow. In Svapanavastha, they number 25, and the place is the throat. In the Sushutyavastha, they number 3, and the place is the heart. In the Turiyavastha, they number 2, and the place is the Nabi. and in the Turyatita Avasta, the soul dwells alone. The 35 are the 10 Indriyas and their 10 subtle elements, the Tanmatras, the 10 Pranas, and the 4 Antakaranas and soul. The 25 are arrived at by omitting the first, the Indriyas. The 3 are Chitta, Prana, and Soul. The 2 are Prana and Soul. In the Turyatita, the soul alone exists. Sivagnana Yogi adds that even in Turyatita, the soul is united to the subtle causal matter, but what is meant is it had not developed into a separate and differentiated organic body. How these are energized by the Vidya Tattvas. In Jagra, all the 5 Shiva tattvas from Shiva and Shakti, etc., are active. In the Svapna, the first 4, and in the next, the first 3, and in the Turiya, the first 2, and in the last condition, Shiva tattva alone is active. The soul seen with the help of these understand this well. Some commentators interpret this to mean that the 35 and 25, etc., are further grouped into groups of 5, etc. The lower and higher avastas. All the 5 avastas are found united in the jiva when it is in the frontal region. You can perceive their play when these organs are active. The ever-wise jnanis also, for getting freed from birth and for entering moksha, unite themselves to the 5 higher avastas with the grace of God. The lower avastas are called samala avastas, and the higher the nirmala avastas. Even in the latter there are stages as jagra, svapna, etc., and the condition of the jivan mukta in these stages is fully described in the agamas. In the next verse, these 2 conditions are also distinguished from the 5 avastas undergone by the yogi. The fruits of these conditions. Of these 2 kinds of avastas, the one lower will drag down man into births, the other will lift him up, freeing him from birth. The yogi attaining to samadhi will attain salvation in another birth. Karanavasta. The causal or subtle avastas are 3, called Kevala, Sakala, and Suddha. The soul is in Kevala when the soul is by itself. It is in Sakala when God unites it to all its senses and organs. It is in Suddha when leaving birth it is free from all mala, impurities. In the Kevala, the soul is hidden up in a nava and has no activities of any kind, and it is lost or sunk like a bright diamond in a dirty pool, or like the same diamond coated with the dirt all round. In the Sakala condition, its intelligence, etc., receives play now and then through the aid of the physical faculties, just as the different facets of the diamond reflect the light, now blue, now red, etc., as each side is ground and rubbed of its dirt and ruggedness. When all its angles and ruggedness and dirt is removed, it reflects fully and steadily the supreme light and is merged in the same glory. These conditions are fully described in the next 3 stanzas. Kevalavasta. In the Kevalavasta, the soul is non-intelligent, it is formless, imperishable. It is not united to ragam and other gunas, nor to kala and other tattvas. It is actionless, markless. It is not a self-agent. It cannot enjoy fruits. It is united to a nava, and it is vibhu, omnipresent by nature. This differentiation is important. There is a verse in almost the same terms in the Tirumantram. Evidently, both are translated from the same verse in the Agama. Vibhu is explained to mean as not localized in any one place of particular body. Sakalavasta. In the Sakala, the soul gets a body and becomes clothed with the various organs and senses, internal and external, and the desire to enjoy the objects of the senses, and reincarnates in different births. Shuddhavasta. When he becomes balanced in good and evil, the grace of the Lord descends on him. He gets Guru's grace. He attains Jnana Yoga Samadhi and is free from the triple mala. He ceases to be finite in intelligence, and becoming omniscient, he is united to the feet of the Lord. This is the Suddha condition. Sutaram 5, on the relation of God, soul, and body. God the Supreme Knower and Instructor. As the senses can only understand with the aid of the soul and yet cannot know the soul, so also the soul can only understand with the grace of the Lord and yet cannot know him. The all-knowing Shiva alone knows all and imparts knowledge to all. This power of the Lord is called his Tirabhava Shakti. Adhikaranam 1. Why don't souls all equally understand well? If God imparts knowledge, then the knowledge of all must be equal. If the difference in wisdom is due to karma, then no God is necessary. No, the Lord gives to each according to his karma, in the same way as the earth yields according to the labor spent on it, or as the sun brings into bloom the lotus buds. Though the soil may be equally good, one man reaps a good crop and another not, as he labors well in it or not. Though the sun is absolutely necessary for the maturity and blooming of flowers, yet the sun cannot make the bud blossom before its time. This view does not destroy the omnipenetrativeness of God, while at the same time it preserves to the individual his responsibility. It is this view which saves Hinduism from degenerating into blind fatalism or base pantheism. The following verse from Lakodaya Nayamar expands the simile of the lotus beautifully. In the tank of a Navamala, in the mire of karma, the lotus bud of Maya is planted, and it shoots into the stalk of 24 tattvas and bud with petals of the 7 higher tattvas up to Vidya and Maheshvara and Sadashiva, as stamens and Shakti, as the ovary and Nadam and Vindu as the pistil. Such is the lotus seat formed of my body which thou graciously occupiest. I fanciest that I did occupy it myself. Thou gavest me that light of grace to perceive my error. O thou Ambalavana of Tiruvavaduttarai, that art non-existent to men in bondage and existent to those dwelling in grace, and who showerest his grace to his devotees. Can the soul understand itself? The soul understands only with the aid of the Supreme Intelligence and cannot understand by itself, inasmuch as this knowing soul knows only through some sense or other, forgets what it has learnt, and learns from others, and does not know himself the knower. The soul is not self-luminous of Svaprakasa, of Svayam Jyoti, and God is defined as Svaparaprakasha, self-luminous and illuminating all others. Adhikaranam 2. How God impacts knowledge. The one only God graciously imparts knowledge to the soul by means of the various organs of sense and sensations, by means of the luminaries and time, karma and bodies, by means of books on logic and philosophy, and by the word of the Guru, inasmuch as the soul in the Kevala condition is formless and non-intelligent. God requires not these aids for himself. The one God knows all without the aid of any organs or objects or luminaries or time or karma or body or books, etc., creates the universe, is different from it, is the soul of souls and makes them know. Does God receive taint by his presence in the world? You have forgotten the Vedic text that the worlds undergo change in the mere presence of God. God cannot be enshrouded in Maya, and no Achit can make itself felt in the presence of Shiva, the supreme cheat. In his presence, the embodied souls undergo evolution and are given wisdom. All are but parts of him. The worlds form his body, the jivas his limbs, the Ichcha, Jnana, and Kriya Shaktis his Antakarana, inducing all the countless jivas to reap good or evil according to their deserts. The Supreme Lord dances the dance of creation, sustenance, destruction, suppression, and liberation. His acts are compared to a dance, as they are solely intended for the benefits of the soul's spectators and not for any pleasure or profit of God himself. God's grace now bestowed. How God's grace is bestowed. The Supreme One, after inducing the jiva to unite in bodies with 5 senses and undergo pleasures and pains, and thus make it gather experience by undergoing many births, and at the right time graciously grants the higher knowledge and gives their liberation. God's relation to his Shakti. Hara has grace for his Shakti, except as this supreme love and grace there is no Shiva. Without Shiva there is no Shakti. Isa removes the illusion of the souls with his love and grants them bliss, just as the sun dispels the darkness shrouding the eyes with his light. Suttaram 6. Nature of the Supreme. If you ask whether God is an object of knowledge or not, then know, if he is an object of knowledge, he will become Achit and Asat. If he cannot be known, he must be a non-entity. The all-pervading Shivam is neither, and is pure Chit and Sat. In the presence of the Sat, cognized by following the true path, Asat will not appear. Adhikaranam 1. What is Achit? All objects of cognition are Achit. All objects of cognition come into being and are destroyed, being bound by time. They divide themselves into the worlds, bodies, and organs, being bound by space, and enjoyments. They are identified at one time by the intelligence as itself in bandha, and at another time, in moksha, are seen as separate, and they are all products of Maya. Hence all such are Achit, or non-intelligent, or Asat, other than Sat. Asat defined, the enjoyments of this life and the bliss of the King of Gods, Vishnu and Brahma, the lives of the countless millions of sentient beings, all these may be compared to the tricks of the magician, or the dreams, or the mirage. They seem only to exist and then perish instantly. Hence the world is spoken of as Asat. Adhikaranam 2. God is not unknowable. If God is unknowable, then there can be no benefit from him. He can never pervade us, neither can we unite with him in moksha. He cannot perform the panchakrityas for our benefit. His existence will be like that of the flowers of the sky and of the rope formed of the hairs of the tortoise. The truth is, he cannot be known with our pashabodha. We can only perceive him with his grace or Sivagnana. Andhikaranam 3. God is not anirvachana. Why should not God be described as a nirvachana, being neither sat nor asat nor satasat? Well, if the answer to the query whether God is existent or not should be that he is existent, then it only establishes that he is sat. Hence he is chit, which is past our human thought and speech. It is achit that can be perceived by our human mind. How can God be known? The known objects are achit and perishable, and the unknown is called sat. And what is the use, as God virtually is non-existent? The knower will perceive him with his grace as ananya. God who is thus known is the knowledge different from the soul and is one with it. God will be known in the form of love, aral alone. This relation is the Advaita. Till the soul by God's grace becomes one with God, it is impossible to know him. In that condition too, as the soul is one with God, it cannot know him as other than himself, and the soul itself is Shivam. But if the Jiva Mukta should for a time regain his individual consciousness, then he may feel his experience of God, just as a man waking from sleep speaks of his experience in sleep. In the next Adhikarana, even the knowledge of yogi is said to be unreal. Adhikaranam 4. The yogi's conception of God not real. If God can be meditated then as an object of our senses, he becomes asat. If you regard him as not conceivable by our organs, even that it is of no use, if you contemplate him as beyond contemplation, even then it gives you no benefit, as it is a mere fiction. If you contemplate him as yourself, that is also a fiction. Giving up these fictitious ideas of God, the only way to know him is by understanding with his arul or grace. The various conceptions of the yogi are pronounced to be merely fictitious and symbolic. Vide notes on the 6th sutra in my edition of Sivagnana Bodham for a fuller treatment of the subject. Why God cannot be perceived. As God is not different from the soul, as he is in the soul, and as he is the thinker of all the soul's thoughts, as in knowing him the knower, the known and the knowledge cannot be distinguished, there is no distinction. God cannot be perceived by the soul's intelligence. The first three statements explain the Advaita relationship. The next argument shows that in God there is no distinction of jnaturu, jnana, and jnaya. The next verse gives a caution not to mistake the soul for God. Soul is and is not God. When only one without a second is postulated, the very postulating implies that the thing postulated is different. God is not different either, as he is inseparably associated with you and transcends all discriminating intelligence, as he is ever the inside of the soul can be said to Shivam.